Thank you, Mr Canoe. And I'm going to go to Senator McDonald first of all until 10 past. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And look, thanks very much for coming along. It must be a bit nerve-wracking to come to a Senate inquiry and to give evidence as you've done and openly. And so thanks for doing that. I guess have you ever met a politician before?
No.
No, but we watch you on TV.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have much of a life if that's what you do.
No, not anymore.
Look, in both cases, was this your first... What work experience had either of you had before you started with the Salvation Army?
I had a little bit of experience working with the homeless in Sydney, but I worked at JB Hi-Fi.
And I was a former McDonald's manager. And
What?
A McDonald's manager.
Yeah.
And that's as close
Have
as
either of you been to any third world country?
We had.
We'd been to China and...
I've been to a few.
I'm not sure that China would call itself third
Yeah.
world these days.
Not these days, no.
Well, not similar to PNG and no scale.
But you describe some very difficult circumstances in Manus, but I think you also acknowledge that is PNG. Port Moresby is one of the...
Yeah.
Now, you knew that before you went up there. That didn't deter either of you from...
We had heard when we were working in Nauru that staff were pulling out of PNG. We never wanted to go to PNG. I know I didn't. I'd heard horror stories about it. It was after the alleged riot that they told us we would go there, and we went thinking that we would be sent back to Nauru. So, I mean, we didn't want to go there.
I mean, you give an account of fear and all the threats made against you, but you didn't think it was worthwhile saying, I'm resigning, I'm out of here, I'll go back to Australia where it's safe.
No, because we knew that there was work to be done there. I don't think we knew to the extent of how unsafe it was. We knew PNG was dangerous, but we thought we were working with asylum seekers in Manus Island. We didn't expect what happened.
Manus is a different country, of course, but and PNG, I mean, I love them all and they're proud of their country, but it is, you know, you can't walk down the street of Lae at all, secondary city, and Port Moresby is, you know, you've got to be careful where you go. So what's happening at... you'd probably both be pleased that there are no more asylum seekers coming to Australia since the boats have been stopped, you know, that one-line slogan you mentioned. So there'll be no more new transferees going to PNG.
Well,
you'd be happy about that, are you?
I wouldn't say I was happy that, I mean, we were turning boats back. I don't think that's something that I'd be happy about, but I'm happy that no more people are being put in the conditions that they're in Nauru and Manus. But I wouldn't go as far to say I'm happy that, you know, people aren't coming.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, we won't have a debate, but well, in either of your experiences while working there, did you hear that there is evidence that the asylum seekers were calling the PNG nationals niggers and cannibals and, you know, gay people and all the abuse of racist, sexist terms? Did you experience any of that sort of behaviour by the asylum seekers?
I think they were obviously upset at their situation. I never heard them insult the colour of their skin or their sexuality ever. But there was no cross-cultural awareness of either group. But I wouldn't be saying that they were calling them racist names.
Did the asylum seekers shout abuse of whatever form? Did they call them cannibals or blackfellas?
They were told by staff that they were cannibals. So they used to come and ask us, are these people cannibals?
No, my question is, had you seen the asylum seekers shouting at PNG nationals either there in one capacity or another? These derogatory terms?
The only person I saw them shouting at was Scott Morrison when he came in November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell me, when you first went there and discovered all of these problems, did you write to your local MP or perhaps to Mr Rudd, the Labor Premier who sent them there? You didn't feel that offended them to take some action like that? I
think when you're asking questions like that, you have to consider the context of the situation that we were in. I mean, we didn't feel that we could speak to anyone. We were bound by these confidentiality agreements.
Do you think if you wrote to Mr Rudd as Prime Minister, who actually started the Manus and Nauru thing and said, look, dear Mr Rudd, these conditions are appalling, you shouldn't have done it, you thought if you did that you'd be somehow penalised?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you'd think as the Prime Minister he would know what is happening over there.
Do you think he knew what was happening?
I think he did know, and he didn't care.
Didn't care.
The conditions were set up to make these people return home, I believe.
Did many of the people that you came in contact with want to go home? That is, to where they came from?
No, I believe none of them wanted to return. Why would you make the journey if you wanted to return home? That just sounds silly to me. People want to return home now as they fear their lives over there.
But
Fear for their
I
lives.
mean, their purpose of gaining asylum was because they feared their life in their home country, and yet they now fear their life in PNG.
Yeah,
so
and that's
they'd
the
rather go back
situation
to
they're
where
in
they-
now. They stay there, they fear for their life, or they go home and fear for their life. With their family, at least they have their family there. In PNG, they don't have their family.
Do you like the idea of, whereas Mr Rudd arranged for them to stay in PNG, but the current government is looking at other places that are perhaps more, in inverted commas, civilised, places like Vietnam, Cambodia?
I think they're shirking their responsibility. I mean, they came to Australia, they didn't come seeking asylum in PNG or Cambodia or any other country.
So just because I mean, you're aware that there are literally millions of people waiting in refugee camps to come to Australia,
I just
waiting their
think
turn.
As
You're aware
a
of that,
signatory of, to the Refugee Convention, that using the argument that people are waiting in line, I mean, I just don't think it's valid. I mean, the
But
facts
you,
of the
you
matter.
don't think that people who are following the rules, waiting in squalid refugee camps right around the world, waiting to be one of the 13,000 that gets into Australia, should be overborne by wealthy, very often well-educated people who take the risk to come here illegally? You don't think...
I think the question, I mean, personally, I mean,
No, I'm asking for your view.
my opinion is they don't come illegally. I mean, they come unlawfully, but by calling
Well,
them
unlawfully,
illegal,
okay.
you're just dehumanising them even more.
Okay, but do you think that's fair to the refugees in the squalid camps around the world that have been
I just
waiting
don't think
for
that you
years
can
to get-
consider it in relation to that. I mean, we're talking about people who've come to seek asylum in Australia and being sent to Manus Island and Nauru and being treated like animals. And we're talking, I mean, they're here now, like we have to do something about it. We shouldn't be sending them to these places and treating them the way we are. I mean, let's look at it in the context, they killed a man. So what are we supposed to do?
There
Let them
were
stay
300 or
there?
400 people killed on boats coming to Australia. Did you raise your voice in protest against that?
Well, at that time, before I started work, I wasn't thinking about refugees as I stated in my statement. But when I got there, I started thinking
But
about,
do you think they're
the...
better off in the camps in Manus than drowning in the Indian Ocean?
I feel like the questions you're asking aren't even relevant to the investigation. I mean, we're talking about Manus Island and Nauru. We're not talking about my political opinion of something, in another country. We're talking about
We're
Reza
just trying
Baradi's
to-
death and the events that
Well,
led up to
it's
that.
legitimate
We're
for
not
the-
talking about people drowning at sea.
It's legitimate for the committee to see where you're coming from in the evidence you give.
Okay, so where I'm coming from is that we mistreated asylum seekers in Manus Island, and that is what I'm here to talk about. I'm not here to talk about people dying at sea. I am upset people die at sea, but I am upset that somebody killed Reza Baradi and injured countless others. That's what I'm here to talk about.
But you're also upset that many hundreds died
Of
because...
course.
Because...
As a human being, why wouldn't I be?
Yeah, okay.
There's other policies that could be implemented, not just Manus Island. To
Yeah,
stop
but
the
we're not
boats.
going to suggest that. Can we
But we're
talk
not.
about what we're here to talk about? Because
Yeah.
that's what I want to talk about.
Well, I've read your submission. I know what you...
Okay, so can I have some questions in relation to my submission?
Well, I thought all of mine were relevant to
I don't
that.
think
And
they are.
I just wonder... I mean, it's commendable that you are concerned, but it seems to be a latterly acquired concern, one that you didn't seem to worry about when 300 people were being killed on the boats. The boats are
Okay.
stopped now. That won't happen anymore.
So I'll give you an opportunity to answer that question.
Okay,
I think
so-
there was a question implied there, and then I'll move on to Senator
Sure.
Thanks, Chair.
Hanson.
Okay, so when I started work, I was 22 years old. I was a student, and I suppose in a way I was focused on myself. I wasn't thinking about...
How old are you now?
24. I wasn't thinking about, unfortunately these people are dying at sea. As I said, I didn't even know what a refugee really was. So, I mean, now I'm thinking about, the bigger picture. But I'm upset by the whole issue, but I just don't see how bringing up, deaths at sea is of any relation
Very
to this
difficult to
inquiry.
understand what a lot of Senate committees are all about and what they ask, so
Yes.
you're not alone there.
Thank you, Ms Judge, and I'm going
Thanks,
to go
Chair.
now to, I think I'll go to Senator Hanson-Young and